This country is in a revolution. They're sick and tired of what they're getting, and I happen to be lucky enough to be part of it.
It has been said that when in the course of human events, an oppression so revolts its subject that it becomes necessary to alter or abolish the means of that tyranny. Is it that time when our Bill of Rights is defiled every day? When our adventures abroad threaten our security at home? When the Federal Reserve keeps our free nation enslaved by debt? When the people of the world struggle under the thumb of corporate imperialism? And now, our nation is drifting dangerously from freedom to fascism. So I have to ask, is it time?
And now, from the luxurious albino raccoon recording studios located in the Midwestern heart of America, it's the Last Voice for Liberty Network. And here is your host, The Mouth.
Greetings and salutations to all my fellow patriots. It is time. The Last Voice for Liberty Network back on the air here on the 5th day of February 2013. I am, of course, your host, The Mouth, laughing and scratching at you once again, folks. We're here today to talk to you about several things that are going on in the news today, and have been going on all weekend, actually. First of all, we want to talk to you guys about what happened this weekend in Europe. I know last week I went on a bit of a who cares what the hell's going on over there. There are still examples in Europe being set daily that the United States as a country needs to pay attention to, because we need to learn from what's going on. And what I'm talking about, folks, if you're not aware of it, is Iceland. The Icelandic taxpayers won their case against the European establishment. That's right. Now, if you don't know too much about what happened with Iceland during the 2008 economic crash, their whole economy went to shit. Now, their government and the banksters had approved all these kick-ins to European Union members and such. And Iceland pretty much told them to go fuck themselves.
Right near the beach.
Now, this major victory for the taxpayers in Iceland, where an obscure transnational court ruled against the European Union and a similar supranational body last week. They decided that the tiny population of the island nation was not responsible for the massive liabilities of a private Icelandic bank that went bust during the 2008 economic meltdown. The establishment analysts blasted the decision as a blow to global banking, which, if you listen to this show, you know I'm pumping the fist. I'm like, yeah, baby, that's right. A blow to global banking. Let's kick their asses.
Hey, fool, you ready for another beating? You should have never came back.
Is this what they're after? Hey, you guys hear all about, everybody's too quick to put down Alex Jones and my good friend Austin Thomas about the banksters and the gangster banksters.
Shoot them all and let God sort them out.
And we're talking about them wanting a one world bank, a one global government.
Who the fuck said that shit?
They just tell you. The establishment analysts say the decision is a blow to global banking. That's what they're trying to do. You putting down these guys for saying it, but they're the ones that are fucking backing it up.
Shut the fuck up, you won't fucking hot on.
Alex Jones, Glenn Beck, these guys that come out and say everybody, oh, they're nuts. Austin Thomas, Mouth, you're crazy.
You dick.
You guys don't know what you're talking about. You're just spreading fear. You're fear mongers. When the establishment that we're fighting against, we're telling you the establishment is bad, trying to establish a one world government and one world bank and everything. And you're telling us we're all crazy. But the establishment comes and backs it up and says, yeah, this is a blow to global banking, which is our goal here.
You underestimate the power of the dark side.
And people still say we're crazy. They still say we're nuts. In the face.
Tell them, McCluskey. Tell them what time it is.
Of plain truth. We're saying it. The establishment that we're protesting against is saying, yeah, that's what we're doing. And you people are still going, that's not what they're doing. I get so many of these dumb motherfucker comment on the post. I don't remember even what the post was about anymore, but it just continues to go on and calling us fearmongers and you're just spreading unnecessary fear. No, we're spreading information so that everyone knows.
But the more you hate me, the more you will learn.
And you're telling everyone that we're full of shit and everything we believe is bullshit. Well, I believe that the gangster banksters all need to be in prison and jailed. The Icelandic people seem to agree with that. And now, a transnational court in Europe agrees with me as well.
Where's your big comeback now, huh, tough guy?
Icelanders and proponents of the free market celebrated this verdict, folks, and as we all should. It's a big win for the people and market principles. Now, after all, the citizens should not be forced to pay for the reckless and potentially criminal actions of a few bankers, widely criticized as banksters in the recent years. We should not. What did we do here? They forced us to pay them back. Iceland did the exact opposite in the 2008 crisis that we did. We went and bailed them all out, and our government decided that they were too big to fail, and the United States taxpayer had to pay for them. Well, listen to this, folks. The Luxembourg-based European Free Trade Association, EFTA, court, this is the court that heard this case and did the deciding, of which the Icelandic government is a member, issued its landmark ruling on January 28th, folks, addressing two key charges against national authorities. Despite Iceland not being a member of the European Union, one of the cases against the country was filed by the European Commission, a sort of executive branch in the sprawling, increasingly powerful, and ever out of control European superstate. Now, the EFTA Surveillance Authority also filed a case alleging a violation of its rules.
You're no good motherfucker.
Now, the first complaint, folks, was that the Icelandic government failed to obey a European Union directive ordering it to pay about $25,000 worth of, quote-unquote, insurance to every foreign depositor by extracting it from domestic taxpayers. Now, this is a proposition that would have devastated the 300,000 or so Icelandic citizens and their already ruined economy for generations to come. Now, while the bankrupt bank's assets have been used to compensate these foreign depositors, the EFTA court ruled that the citizens are not responsible for these liabilities, which is the truth. The EU dictate in question, which Iceland is supposed to subscribe to because of its membership in the European Economic Area, the EEA, does not lay down an obligation on the state and its authorities to ensure compensation if a deposit guarantee scheme is unable to cope with its obligation in the event of a systematic crisis. Now, the EFTA court ruling said that the verdict is final, cannot be appealed in any other court, meaning that Iceland emerged victorious after years of wrangling with these authorities in Europe. I'm going to call them quote-unquote authority. They put themselves in charge.
You're a liar.
Now, the bank in question, Lands Banking. Lands Banking. It's funny to say, too. It is. It's LANDSBANKI. Yep, Lands Banking. It had 4 online branches under the brand IceSave for depositors in Europe. Now, the subsidiaries accepted deposits from customers in both the United Kingdom and the Netherlands. And when the economic crisis struck in 2008, however, the huge Icelandic bank collapsed. Now, the UK and the Dutch government stepped in to cover the lost deposits of their subjects, but both governments later sought to force Icelandic taxpayers to repay the cost of bailouts, plus huge sums of interest. Now, when the people of Iceland said, no way, twice, over 9 out of 10 voters rejected what critics had said was tantamount to debt slavery in a referendum. Authorities on the continent still would not give up. Now, this is a strong no from the Icelandic nation, said economist Magnus Arne Skulason with In Defense. This is a group that rallied opposition to the bailout scheme and after the vote. Now, the Icelandic public understands that we are sovereign, and we have to be treated like a sovereign nation, not being bullied like the British and the Dutch have been doing. Now, speaking of sovereignty, Iceland recently expelled a team of FBI agents trying to investigate the activities of WikiLeaks, according to some local news reports out of Iceland. Yeah, they're kicking the FBI out and get your fucking asses out of here, too. We got nothing for you here. You have no authority here.
You stink, and I don't like you.
And this is what we need to do as a country, is stop our government and our bank and these banks.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
These banks need to repay to the American taxpayer each and every dollar that we send into them to be bailed out, and they need to pay it back now.
Yeah!
If it means that you have to go out of business and close your bank, too fucking bad. You should have thought about that before you started making these fraudulent loans and horrible decisions and criminal activities that caused the entire meltdown to begin with.
You stole from my kin.
Now, this banking case and the referendums, however, sparked an international diplomatic furor, with UK officials abusing terror laws to seize Icelandic assets in Britain. That's right. They're calling them terrorists. Finally, the international disputes ended up in the EFTA court, with Iceland defending itself from hostile European authorities demanding huge sums of cash from innocent Icelanders who had nothing to do with the privately owned failed bank. Now, it's important to bear in mind, folks, that payments from the estate of the failed Landsbanki will continue, regardless of the ruling of the EFTA court. Now, this is what the Icelandic Foreign Ministry said in the statement, explaining that the bankrupt bank's assets were being used to pay back depositors in Europe. Analysts cited in news reports expected that Landsbanki's remaining assets would actually be enough to cover all that's going to be owed anyway. Now, still in Iceland, in a separate comment in Iceland, Icelandic officials also confirmed their belief that the leftover assets would be enough to pay back all the debts. They said, quote, it is expected that the I-Save claims will be paid out full by the actual debtor, the estate of the failed Landsbanki. Now, still in Iceland, citizens and authorities were delighted with their vindication in court. There are people out in the streets cheering, because it is of considerable satisfaction that Iceland's defense has won the day in the I-Save case, the Icelandic Foreign Ministry statement continued. Now, the EFTA court ruling brings to close an important stage in the long saga. Prominent citizens celebrated their victory over the banksters, too. Like I said, folks, they're out in the streets cheering. They know what they have done is great. They know that they have set an example for the rest of the world to be able to follow.
Yes, you did!
Think of all the possibilities. There are more to this. The second complaint against Iceland alleged discrimination against foreigners. Now, this is what they do. When you don't want to play ball with them, then they call you an isolationist. Ask Ron Paul, who know all about this. Now, essentially, the authorities on the continent were outraged that the national government had bailed out Landsbanki's Icelandic depositors, but not those from the United Kingdom or the Netherlands, who had savings in the bank subsidiaries in the EU. Now, if Iceland had lost the case, the domestic taxpayers could have been forced to pay some $2.6 billion. That's about 20% of their gross domestic product, folks. 20%. That's what they're trying to rape these people for. There's only 300,000 some citizens on Iceland. Okay? It's not huge. It's not this vast fucking metropolis. Now, during the 2008 economic crisis, all of Iceland's major banks collapsed. All of them. Overwhelming the National Deposit Insurance Scheme. Now, considering its size, the nation had a massive banking sector. I mean, with three major banks crumbling, when the three major banks crumbled and their total liabilities were estimated at around 10 times the size of Iceland's total GDP. Now, while much of the drama is now over, after 4 years of bitter battles, however, Icelanders will not forget how they were treated after the collapse of the nation's banking sectors. The Icelandic president, Olafur Ragnar Grimsson. Yeah, it took me 10 minutes to translate this earlier. He recently slammed the United Kingdom government's actions, telling Sky News that his people would never forget how they were treated by Prime Minister British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, that self-styled advocate of a new world order. The Brown government, he said, decided to put Icelandic government right on the list of terrorist states and terrorist phenomena. We were there together with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban on that list. President Grimson complained in an interview with the British media giant Sky News that he says, we have not forgotten that in Iceland. Now still, folks, the Icelandic officials sounding upbeat after their recent ruling said that the court verdict would be positive. So this will improve our credit rating, and judging by our conversations with the credit rating companies, there is no doubt that this strengthens our position. The Finance Ministry Permanent Secretary Gudmundur Arnason goes on to say, however, the Treasury doesn't have any immediate financing needs. It's quite the contrary. This puts us in a comfortable position to evaluate when we should re-enter the markets. That means these guys not only has allowing their banks to fail and then to get sold off to their debtors and to restart their economy the way they've done. Not only is it working, folks, it's actually starting to boom. They've got the luxury now of sitting back and waiting until the markets are right before they need to re-enter with any type of investment from the public funds. That's what they've done. That's what we could have done.
No shit.
But we didn't. And where are we at? With jobs being lost, the economy's going down to shit. The U.S. dollar is worth 3/4 of what it's supposed to be. Where's Iceland? Iceland's economy has benefited from a remarkable turnaround since it virtually imploded in 2008. However, unlike many Western governments, instead of bailing out all the bankers at taxpayer expense, the small nation's government actually investigated and prosecuted some of the criminals responsible for fraudulent activities that contributed to the crisis. We are supposed to be this nation of justice. We think so highly of ourselves that we police the entire rest of the world.
I'm playing bullshit!
But we can't investigate and prosecute some of the criminals that are responsible. No one has gone to jail for the 2008 financial crisis. No one anywhere, from government to the financial institutions. Somebody fucked around and did something bad, approving these financial loans that people couldn't pay for, and everything such else that goes along with it. But no one's gone to jail for it. People have lost homes, jobs, lives.
People like this are a menace to decent society.
And no one's gone to jail in this country for it.
He had sex with my mama.
How can this little island up near the North Pole
Merry Christmas, movie home! Merry Christmas, Emporium!
be smarter than the collective intelligence of the United States? Because we didn't want to bail them out. That's what the government does. They're run by the banksters. The banksters said, hey, you guys got to give us money. That's it.
The day when I would have the proof I needed to haul you out of your cushy lair and expose you to the light of justice as the monster that you are.
Now, this latest ruling in Iceland, folks, it's widely celebrated by all the Icelanders and all the proponents of free markets like myself, who say the companies should stand and fall on their own merits.
I like what I'm hearing.
The taxpayer should never be forced to rescue economic actors who make poor decisions.
You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
Insurance, meanwhile, should be in the private market, and consumers must be expected to use common sense in their economic choices, whether that to be what bank to deposit their money in or what car to buy. It should be the people's choice. Now, however, folks, in the halls of power at the Brussels-based EU, so-called Eurocrats are already devising new schemes to ensure that citizens will be responsible for bank liabilities all across the bloc. The superstate, for instance, is currently working fiendishly to impose a banking union on Europe that would have serious negative implications for free markets, competition, and for national sovereignty, for that matter. Now, in the light of the recent court decisions, advocates of even greater centralization of power are demanding that Brussels fix the problems immediately.
You had best unfuck yourself, or I will unscrew your head.
That means, hey, you better we better start making laws so nobody can do this again.
Unfucking-leavable. It's stacked.
Our whole little paper house of cards is just gonna fall down.
You get nothing. You lose.
And people start, why do you think you're not hearing about Iceland? I have never heard one thing about Iceland on television. One thing about Iceland on the radio.
Were you watching Spank Television?
I've seen some pretty shitty situations in my life, but nothing has ever sucked more ass than this.
Finding stories about it on the internet and reading and doing my own research. And I believe I'm the only one that's ever talked about Iceland that I've heard on any type of show. You damn sure aren't going to hear it on the big shows. I think Glenn Beck might have mentioned it once. But that's before while him and his stupid Cheeto head buddies were yapping about something that meant nothing. I don't know, well, Iceland did it. Unbelievably, and then it just went on to nothing.
I'm sorry, Tyler. It was an accident. I was having too much fun. I'll offer you a truce.
Now,
The stickiest of the icky. You want to smoke with the old boy Rick James?
us advocates of free markets and national sovereignty have long suggested that these radical reforms in the banking sector, abolishing central banks, and all the inherent problems that come with them.
Now, darkness, the tables are turned. Do with him whatever you like.
Like all the wars that we're spreading around to get into the countries that don't have them. Now, allowing banks and consumers to make their own decisions and accept responsibility for the consequences of these decisions is not an unreasonable thing to ask.
Listen here, you beautiful bitch. I'm about to fuck you up with some truth.
That's right. We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We've got to keep our composure.
Iceland's may have been saved from these massive debts and transnational decrees this time, but the same flawed system still remains in place. And the next crisis could just be around the corner. It could be a lot worse than this recent one. The way countries in the world, not just ours, but countries in the world, have set up their governments, modeling them in a democracy. By us democracy spreaders, the United States. It will fail. Democracy is the bastard father of socialism. Every democracy leads to socialism. You know why? Because the majority has the rule. And the majority has omnipotent rule in a democracy. The minority and the rights of the individual mean nothing.
You are 3 seconds away. And the rock means 3 seconds away from the rock to lay a smackdown on your candy ass.
And let me tell you, folks, if you think that you can have control of the opposition as a minority, and when the minority has no rights in the democracy, the minority just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and people finally get tired of going, fuck, I'm tired of not being heard. I might as well join them. You can't beat them, join them. The next thing you know, you have communism. It's a fucking roadmap that history has led us. They've set it out for us. Read through history. Watch what happens every time. Every time. Socialism fails. Communism only works if you do it with the barrel of a gun. Or starving your people like they're doing in North Korea. It will fail every time. At some point in time, you're not going to want to do what the herd wants to do because the herd is to be running towards a cliff. You're going to stop and go, hey, wait a minute. And guess what? In socialism and in a democracy, you being the one that stops and says, hey, wait a minute, guess what gets you? People, you're fucking crazy. You're a fearmonger. There's no cliff. That cliff's there's only a 2-foot drop on the other side. You're just full of it. Everything you believe is bullshit. That's what you get in a democracy, folks. You get ridiculed, you get knocked around, you get told that you're nuts, you get people threatening you, cussing at you, telling you you're a piece of shit. That's what you get in a democracy. And a democracy, since you're the minority, the majority can decide to vote and make a law making you illegal. And then you go to jail, sitting right in the prison, and they don't have to deal with you no more. They don't have to hear your dissidents. We're going to take a quick commercial break here, folks. We'll be right back on the Last Voice for Liberty Network.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear of atomic energy. None of them can stop at the time. How long must they kill God's prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book. Won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? Was all I ever had. Redemption song. Won't you help me sing redemption song? Oh, redemption song.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate this opportunity. First, I would like to say I hope the Humphrey Hawkins requirement continues. I think that's important. I do also note that frequently at these hearings we don't talk much about monetary policy, which is the purpose of the meeting. We frequently talk about taxes and welfare spending. But I would like to concentrate more on the monetary policy and the value of the dollar. There are some economists who in the past, such as Mises and Hayek, as well as Friedman, have emphasized that inflation is a monetary phenomenon and not a CPI phenomenon. It's not a labor cost phenomenon. And that when we incessantly talk about this, whether it's the Federal Reserve, Treasury, or the Congress, or the financial markets, we really distract from the source of the problem and the nature of our business cycle. I certainly agree that technology has given us a free ride and has allowed us this leverage, but we've also been permitted a lot of inflation, that is the increase in the supply of money and credit. Since 1987, we have had a tremendous increase in money. The monetary base has doubled. M3 has gone up to $2.5 trillion. And this money has gone into the economy, but we have reassured ourselves that the CPI has been stable, so therefore everything is okay. Yet the CPI has gone up 44% since 1987. Real growth on the GDP has not been tremendous. It's about 2.3 per year. But we've had a tremendous increase in capitalization in our stock market, going from $3.5 trillion up to $14 trillion. So that's where the money's going. This generates revenues to the government. This has helped us with our budgetary problems. At the same time, we ignore the fact that hard money people emphasize that not everybody benefits. And there has been a lot of concern expressed that people are left behind. Farmers are left behind, the marginal workers left behind. Some people suffer from a higher CPI than others. But these are all monetary phenomena that we tend to ignore. But you have admitted here today and in the past that the business cycle is alive and well and that we shouldn't ignore it. In your opening statement that we should be especially alert to inflation risks, and I think we certainly should be. And you have expressed concern today and at other times about the current account deficit. And this is getting worse, not better. Our trade balances are off. But I would suggest maybe we have seen some early signs of serious problems because foreign central bank holdings now of our dollars have dwindled to a slight degree. In 1997, they were holding over $650 billion, and they're slightly below $600 billion. And at the same time, we have seen income from our investments dwindle to a negative since 1997. So I think the problems are certainly there. But I would like to talk a little bit more about, or ask you a question about this balance of trade and the value of the dollar. Because history shows that these dollars eventually will come back, and you have assumed that they will. But that essentially the problem we got into in 79 and 80, and there's no guarantee that that won't happen again. That means that the markets will drive interest rates up. We will have domestic inflation. The value of the dollar will go down. Now, my question is, what will your monetary policy be under those circumstances? In 1979 and 1980, you were, not you, but the Fed was forced to take interest rates as high as 21% to save the dollar. But my suggestion is it's not so much that we should anticipate a problem, that the problem is already created by all the inflation of the past 12 years, and that we have generated this financial bubble worldwide, and that we have to anticipate in that. And when this comes back, we're going to have a big problem, and you have to deal with it. And my big question is why would you want to stay around for this? It seems like I'd get out with it while the getting's good.
Dr. Paul, you're raising an issue which a significant number of people have been raising over the years, and for which, frankly, we're not quite sure what the answers are. It's by no means clear, for example, that one can trace the increase in money supply, which presumably has not reflected itself in CPI, into stock values. I mean, a lot of people say it's happening, and a lot of people assume that's what it is, but the evidence is not clear by any means.
May I interrupt, please? Did you not write that that was the case with the 1920s and this was a problem that led to our depression?
No, I didn't raise the issue that, in effect, that the money supply per se, what I was arguing many, many years ago, and I still think is doubtless the case, is that in 1927, involving ourselves with an endeavor to balance the flow of gold in favor of Britain at that time, that we did create a degree of monetary ease which was one of the possible creations of speculation in the market in 28 and 29. What is not evident in today's environment is anything like that is going on. We cannot trace money supply into a speculative bubble. I think that if a bubble in fact turns out to be the case after the fact, we will have a considerable amount of evaluation of where it came from. But as I've said before this committee and indeed before the Congress on numerous occasions, I think that we are uncertain as to the extent to which there is a bubble because, as I said in my prepared remarks, to presume there is a bubble at this particular stage of significant proportions, and a bubble that isn't significant doesn't have any meaning, we have to be saying that we know far more than the millions of very sophisticated investors in the markets. And I've always been very reluctant to conclude that. We do know that a significant part of the rise in prices reflects rising expected earnings, and a goodly part of that is a very major change in the view of where productivity is going. What we do not know is whether it's being overdone or to what extent it's being overdone. I've always said I suspect it is, but firm, hard evidence in this area is very difficult to come by. It's easy to get concerned about it on the basis of all sorts of historical analogies, but when you get to the hard evidence, we do know that inflation is a monetary phenomenon. What we have very great difficulty in knowing is how to measure what that money is. Remember, M2, M1, all of that are proxies for the money that people are talking about when they're referring to money being the creator of inflation. We have had great difficulty in filtering out of our database a set of relationships which we can call true money. It's not MZM, it's not M2, it's not M1, it's not M3, because none of those work in a way which would essentially describe what basically Hayek, Friedman, and others have been arguing correctly on this issue.
So I says to this guy, I said, look, pal, your car was like that when we got here, alright? And as for your grandmother, well, she shouldn't have mouthed off like that. Hey, folks, we're back on the Last Voice for Liberty Network. I am your host, The Mouth. We're back. We're done. Sorry, I was telling a little story around here. Pay no, never mind to that. We are back, and as we talked about in our first segment, the Icelandic people have set an example for us that we need to follow. And we're going to get, I got to say something about this. This is one of the bigger stories that's popped up on the net here in the past couple days. Someone leaking Obama's rules for assassinating American citizens. Now, for over a year now, journalists like myself and civil liberties advocates and members of Congress have all been asking the Obama administration to release internal memoranda from the Office of Legal Counsel justifying Obama's targeted killing program. Now, the White House continues to deny that any such memos exist, but get this, NBC is reporting that it has acquired the next best thing. A secretive 16-page white paper from the Department of Justice that was provided to select members of the Senate last June. Yeah, I trust NBC about as far as I can throw, okay? But it's worth looking at. Now, the 16-page memo, or a copy of which was obtained by NBC News, or given to NBC News, well, that's up for us to decide, I guess, provides new details about the legal reasoning behind one of the Obama administration's most secretive and controversial policies. Now, it's dramatically increased use of drone strikes against al-Qaeda suspects, including those aimed at American citizens, such as the September 2011 strike in Yemen that killed alleged al-Qaeda operatives Anwar al-Awlaki and Samir Khan, both of whom were U.S. citizens and had never been indicted by the U.S. government nor charged with any crimes.
That's fucked up.
Now, things like this could be construed as legal if we were in time of war. And everybody says, well, we're at war. No, we're not. We have not declared war since the 40s. No, the 1940s, folks. Not 40 minutes ago. The 1940s. That was the last time that Congress declared war. And since Congress is the only one that has the power to declare war.
Take a big step back and literally fuck your own face!
They have not declared war. Even the 9/11 attacks in 2001, you would think that that would have been the entire nation at that time, and the horror of those attacks and the tragedy involved in it brought us all, scared us all to death. I was scared shitless watching it on television when it happened. I had 2 kids 3 blocks away in school, and I damn near ran down and pulled them the fuck out. This is not a joke, folks. That frightened and scared the entire nation. We were all brokenhearted. Now, little did we know at that moment in time that our broken hearts and sadness was going to turn to disgust and disdain for what we actually found out, the more of the truth that we find out about 9/11. But at that moment in time, folks, at that moment in time in history, we were all united as Americans. And we were ready to go get the sons of bitches that did it. Now, what better time? What would Congress have been able to get the American people behind it in signing a declaration of war? But they didn't. It wasn't in the 1940s. We had issues of ships being attacked and planes being shot down, and the precursors to World War II. But we still held our ground and said, "Oh, we're not getting involved in Europe's war." It wasn't until the Japanese bombed and the American people were firmly against it. We did not want to go get involved over there. We're just coming out of this damn depression. Things are shitty. People are dying here in this country, starving to death. We had no interest in getting involved in Europe's war at that time. It wasn't until the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor that all of a sudden the opinion in this country changed. We said, hey, wait a minute, these motherfuckers going to come and attack us. Let's go get them. Congress signed a declaration of war. The president signed it as well, making it official, and we went to war. We have not signed a declaration of war since, and have been in perpetual war since the end of World War II.
So it's sort of social, demented and sad, but social.
Explain that to me, folks. When did we just all of a sudden decide that they didn't have to follow the rules anymore? And that's what this entire NDAA and the assassination of American citizens, like I said, folks, if Anwar al-Awlaki and Samir Khan were actually al-Qaeda operatives, actually terrorist operatives that had weapons that they were going to use on the American people, of course they were in Yemen at that point. But then we should have already had indicted them, or at least made it released that, hey, or charged them with crimes. If we didn't indict them and extradite them from Yemen back to the United States to face the charges, then we should have at least charged them with crimes and said, hey, you guys are wanted by the U.S. government for this. But no. They decide they're just going to go shoot motherfuckers that they want to, no matter what.
I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker! I will massacre you!
Folks, we are not at war. You can't, there are rules. Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules? Am I? God damn it! The reason these rules are put into place is so then leaders don't let that power go to their head. Hey, I can go snap out anybody I want. Anybody want to fuck with me now? The American people know I got a secret kill list.
Come on, fuckos, let's go for a ride.
Who's on it? That's for me to know. What? How's this constitutionally right? How can anyone think that this is right? This is what we fled England for.
You're great American.
Has everyone done that? Who the hell do you think you are?
They've leaked all the rules. The PDF's out online. We've got copies of it. It says NBC News imprints all over it because that's where the information that had gotten come out of. That's why I don't, I can't get 100% behind this because, like I said, when anything says NBC News all over it, my immediate reaction is, that's bullshit.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
9 times out of 10, an NBC News story is either manipulated, manufactured, or just flat out false.
Don't let them fool you, oh no. Da 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 da.
Or
even try to screw you, oh yeah. Could this be love? Then be love.
And then I've got to get my words in here real quick about the National Rifle Association. A lot of people say, oh, here we go. Here comes the pro-National Rifle Association. Believe. Yeah, I'm all for gun rights and Second Amendment, and I don't think that there isn't a piece of weaponry that if our police have it, that our citizens shouldn't have it. Citizens should be just as well armed as the police or any other type of invading army that could possibly come.
Hello?
Well, the NRA is, the National Rifle Association is not, their interest in gun rights is not legitimate. It's not Puritans. It really has very little to do with the Second Amendment, to be quite honest. They are more lobbyists than they are anything else.
Could you, shut up and give us the money?
Pay your dues, get a little patch. You pay us money to be called part of this club, and we're going to go lobby and what they're lobbying for 9 times out of 10, you really has very little to do with the rights of the average citizen. It's more what kind of money they can get in their pocket. That's what money has demonized this country and turned it against itself. I am never going to ask anyone to join the NRA. I wouldn't join the NRA. However, you need to understand what we're up against. Now, the NRA, it's coming down to, it's not they're lobbying for a lot of things, and I'm not saying that it's full of bad people. It's not. Okay?
Finish the fucking story, man. What about the clans?
The whole demonization of the NRA in the first place is absolutely ridiculous. It's just done by flat-out proponents of gun rights in the first place. These are the people that want no one to have guns. And a lot of these people work in the United Nations. And what the NRA has come out and done is actually brought to the attention of people what this administration is in cahoots with the UN for doing, what they're prepared to do to disarm the American public. Let me tell you this, folks. Our government has betrayed us for a long time. Our entire involvement in the United Nations has been one succession of sovereignty after another. They are selling our sovereignty out as a free nation, as free people, to be controlled under the one world government of the UN. The Agenda 21, it's all there, folks. This is all fucking true. You don't believe me? Go on the UN website and look at it. Section 3, paragraphs 7 and 8 of the Program of Action mandate that if a member state cannot get rid of privately owned small arms legislatively, then the control of customs, police, intelligence, and arm control will be placed under the power of a board of UN bureaucrats operating out of the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs. They have an office for disarmament affairs. Now, on November 7th of last year, the first committee of the United Nations General Assembly voted 157-0 with 18 abstentions in favor of Resolution L11 that will finalize the Arms Trade Treaty in March 2013. Now, China, the United Kingdom, and Germany all voted to move the historic measure towards passage. Now, as I've told you before, when the treaty was being deliberated last July, the United States was the only obstacle preventing the global arms control regulations from being imposed on the world. We were the last line of defense. Now, miraculously, though, all the points of the agreement that Secretary Clinton found so distasteful in the summer were made all of a sudden so much more palatable after President Obama's re-election. Every single attack on the right to bear arms remains in this version of the treaty that was approved on November 7th. Now, within hours of securing his re-election, Obama placed a late-night call to the U.S. United Nations delegate, ordering them to vote in favor of a passage of L11. Now, as soon as the news of U.S. Policy 180 was confirmed, a new round of negotiations on the treaty was scheduled for March 18th through the 28th at the UN headquarters in New York City. Folks, you're out there with arms. Number one, don't register them with the government. Number two, always have a plan to secure your firearms and ammo outside of your home at a moment's notice, because they're coming for it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, immediately after they scheduled for this negotiations for the treaty in New York in March, it was immediately followed by a press release sent out early the next morning from the United Nations General Assembly First Committee proclaiming the good news of President Obama's go-ahead for the gun grab and setting the agenda for the next gun control conference. Now, also kindling discussion among delegations was a draft resolution that was aimed at building on the progress made toward the adoption of a strong, balanced, and effective arms trade treaty. That text would decide to convene the final United Nations conference for the creation of such a treaty in March 2013. Now, also by that revolution, the draft of the next treaty submitted by the conference's president on July 26 would be the basis for future work, without prejudice to the right of delegations to be put forward additional proposals on that text. Now, the U.S. government was now placing its full weight behind convening this final United Nations conference for the proposal of a treaty imposing worldwide gun control regulations. Now, last July, 51 senators sent a letter to President Obama's Secretary of State Clinton encouraging them not only to uphold our country's constitutional protections of civilian firearms ownership, but to ensure, if necessary, by breaking consensus at the July conference, that the treaty will explicitly recognize the legitimacy of lawful activities associated with firearms, including but not limited to the right of self-defense. Now, the failure to pass an acceptable version of the treaty in July, obviously, is in the president's rearview mirror. As you know, we raised a big stink about that. Now, however, Reuters reports that adoptions of a strong, balanced, and effective arms trade treaty could be imminent. They quote Brian Wood of Amnesty International. After today's resounding vote, he says, if the larger arms trading countries show real political will in the negotiations, we're only months away from securing a new global deal that has the potential to stop weapons reaching those who seriously abuse human rights. It does not. The definition of an abuse of human rights will be left up to a coterie or whatever of internationalist bureaucrats who will be neither accountable nor elected by the citizens of the United States. Now, with good reason then, the gun rights activists, like myself, oppose any type of approval of this treaty. We shouldn't even be talking about it. We shouldn't even be in the fucking United Nations to begin with. Now, after all, it does seem more than a little egregious that a nation that places such a high value on gun ownership that it actually enshrined it in its Bill of Rights, participates in an organization that opposes gun ownership so staunchly that it actually has an office for disarmament affairs. An office, by the way, that the U.S. Deputy Director, Office of Weapons Removal and Abatement, a Bureau of Political Military Affairs, Stephen Costner, proudly announced is going to be moving from Geneva to New York City. So New York City, get ready, here comes the Office for Disarmament Affairs for the United Nations to New York City. They're coming there. They're going to set up headquarters. Now, lest anyone believe that the U.S. delegation's official promise to Reuters that we'll not accept any treaty that infringes on the constitutional rights of our citizens to bear arms, now consider the fact that a report issued after the conclusion of the last arms trade treaty conference in July listed the goal of the agreement to be the UN control of the manufacture, control, trafficking, circulation, brokering, and trade, as well as tracing, finance, collection, and destruction of small arms and light weapons. This was what they're doing. They're telling you, hey, we're not going to do that. But this is what they're telling you they're going to do. They're telling you they're not going to do it, and then they do it. They're lying to you. They're lying to me. They're lying to everyone.
Do you see what happens, Larry, when you fuck a stranger in the ass?
Well, it's a very comprehensive attack, folks, on all aspects of gun trade and ownership. They thought this shit out. Notably, the phrase, in all aspects, occurs 38 times in the draft of the Arms Trade Treaty. The United Nations will control the purchase of guns and ammo, the possession of guns and ammo, and any guns and ammo not willingly surrendered to the UN will be tracked, seized, and destroyed. That is in their Arms Trade Treaty. It says those words. Go on the fucking UN website and read it.
And I don't trust that shit at all.
UN website, they won't fucking lie to you a damn bit. They'll tell you everything they're fucking gonna do. And you'll be disgusted if you actually read it. But a lot of people won't go to it.
That's Democrats for you.
Dios mío, man.
Could you get your daddy on the phone?
All these motherfuckers that sit there and talk shit tell me I'm full of bullshit. Go on the goddamn UN website and read it your fucking self. Deal with it. Why don't I trust them? Because I read what they're doing. They told me why I don't want to trust them.
Does he look like a bitch?
Now, the biggest question, folks, that needs to be considered here is what the UN will consider adequate laws, okay? Now, will the globalists at the UN consider the Second Amendment's guarantee of the right to keep and bear arms without infringement to be a sufficient control on gun ownership? Highly fucking unlikely. The effort at eradication of private gun ownership is actually more insidious than it even appears. Now, on page 25 of the 1997 UN Secretary General's report on criminal justice reform and strengthening legal institutions measured to regulate firearms, of which the United States signed on to, a part of the regulations agreed to by the United States is the administering of a psychological test before a person is cleared to buy ammunition. Now, apparently, the UN recognizes that without ammunition, a gun is no more than a club. So in order to effectively disarm a population, the UN does not need to seize all the weapons, it merely has to prevent the purchase of ammunition. Now, how does the Arms Trade Treaty and the program of action that undergirds it propose to enforce this anti-gun agenda? Section 3, paragraph 7 and 8 of the program action mandate that if a member state cannot get rid of privately owned small arms legitimately, then the control of the customs, the police, intelligence, and arms control are going to be placed under the power of the Board of UN bureaucrats, folks. The UN Office for Disarmament Affairs. Now, the provision includes the deployment of UN peacekeeping forces in a member state to seize and destroy weapons stockpiles. Now, again, folks, there's no definition of stockpile. You can have one gun, and that's a stockpile. You have an armory. But by that time, it's going to be too late to even make the argument. Now, in order to assist these blue helmets and their disarmament overlords in their search for and seizure for this ammunition, Section 3, paragraph 10 mandates that member states develop technology to improve the UN's ability to detect stockpiles of ammo and arms. What? That means not only are they going to use the UN troops to come in and destroy everything, they want us to develop the technology to make it easier for them to do it.
Frankly, I'd rather take it up the butt.
Oh, who's going to fund that? Who's going to fund these technology studies and developments? It damn sure isn't going to be the UN, because you ain't got no fucking money.
You weren't even born with the sense God gave the common dog.
Well, this is going to be made much easier for the UN when the Department of Homeland Security gets its hands on the portable invisible lasers developed by Genia Laboratories. This is a company created by CIA offshoot InQtel, which I'm sure we talked about on this program before. But this can detect even trace amounts of gunpowder from over 50 yards away. It is a complete violation of the Fourth Amendment and our right to privacy.
You want some more of that? I didn't think so!
The laser reportedly can penetrate through walls, glass, and metal. And DHS is scheduled to take possession of devices before the end of this year, according to testimony presented on Capitol Hill last year. This is not just some, hey, I think these guys, they're going to take control sometime this year. My insiders say it. My little birdie told me.
Don't tell anybody, I'll kill you!
No, this is testimony presented upon Capitol Hill. It's a matter of public record. Look it up. Now, the UN's effort to collect ammo from those they wish to oppress, a disarmed society is in fact a slave society. This isn't anything new. The shot heard around the world on Lexington Green in 1775 was fired because British troops planned to seize the ammunition stockpile stored outside of Lexington. Perhaps our reporting on the president's late-night call putting the wheels of global gun control in motion is going to awaken some of you modern Americans to the threat of our sacred Second Amendment rights. After all, it was a late-night call around sleepy colonists in the defense of their right to bear arms as well. This time, however, it's not the British who are coming for our guns and ammunition, it's the United Nations and agents of our own federal government. We're full of shit, we're liars, we're crazy, we don't know what we're talking about.
Doesn't care about you or your children or your right to your welfare or your safety.
We're just trying to help, folks. All the stuff keeps coming through. Everyone keeps turning the blind eye to us, saying, no, that's not it. It's just conspiracy nuts. You're calling us conspiracy theorists when the conspiracy is being admitted to and documented by the United Nations and the federal government. We're full of shit. What we believe is bullshit. Then why are they backing us up? The ones you're defending are backing us up on our claims. Read what they're doing. Look at what they're doing. Pay attention for 5 fucking minutes in your life. God damn it. Gotta get on out of here, folks. I'm about to have a freaking aneurysm. We'll be back again on The Last Voice for Liberty Network.
When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. The utmost manifestation of love and devotion to America is today, as it always has been, resistance of tyranny.